Knotty Giraffe. I believe this is episode 14. It's been a couple of months since I've recorded last. You know how life happens and summer happens and vacations and all that stuff. And plus I wanted to wait until I had some, substantial knitting to talk about. I didn't want to just record because I felt like I had to. So thank you to those of you who reached out wondering where I've been. I'm okay. I know I had a car accident and I had mentioned that in my last episode, but everything's under control and I have a brand new electric vehicle and life is great. So without further ado, I will begin. If this is your first time here, I tend to follow a pretty standard format where I talk about my finished objects, my works in progress, and what's next. I'm also a very avid reader, so I tend to do a bit of book reviews at the end of my podcast. So if you're a reader and you would like to have some information about some great books that I've read, then stick around until the end, okay? All right, without further ado, I will begin with what I'm wearing. This is my Humulus sweater designed by Isabel Kramer. I've knit it a few years ago, so I can't give you quite all the details on it. I do have it on my Ravelry page, which if you look into the description below this video, you'll see there's links to follow me on Ravelry and on Goodreads and on Instagram if you're interested. But it's a top-down yoke construction. I know that it's knit with DK yarn, but I really can't remember what yarn I used for it. So without further ado, I'm just going to jump into my finished objects. Okay, well, I went to look for my first finished object and I couldn't find them. And it was because they were in the freezer, which if you have watched my channel on a regular basis, you may recall last year I had an episode with, where I had trouble with moths. And so I had to put everything wool into my freezer for 2 weeks just to make sure that I killed everything off. And I noticed a moth in the house the other day and I started putting things in the freezer and so I'm ripping the house apart trying to find these, my first finished object, which was Stephen West's surprise knit along. He called it the Color Popportunity, I believe was what he called it. It was a surprise sock knit along. Anyhow, I had put them in the freezer and I ripped the house apart from one end to the other looking for them. Of course, you don't usually expect to find socks in the freezer. So anyhow, I have found the socks. And yes, this is my first finished object. I had never done a Stephen West knit along before, so I thought I would try it. The socks looked kind of interesting. I had only seen the first clue, and yeah, I decided to jump in. So they're knit in a very, very, very different fashion from any sock that I've ever done. I mean, normally you knit, from cuff down or from toe up. But these ones are knit actually going around with the foot. So it's actually, goes this way on your needle. And the first clue was doing the leg of the sock, which are, it's got all the little chevron patterns and everything in it. And then it's joined, you join it in the round with an I-cord bind off using different colors. So in Stephen's pattern, he uses 3 different color pops, different as he calls them. And I decided to just use the 2 because my main color had a lot of the of color woven into it as well, as you can see here. So I thought just having 2 colors would be enough, and I think I was right. So yeah, so the first clue was that you knit the leg portion of the sock, and then on week 2, you pick up stitches around the top and you knit the cuff, which I did, and then you pick up stitches and you knit the heel. And he suggested a brioche heel, which I initially did. It was my first time doing brioche. It took me about 3 or 4 tries before I got it right. But once I finished it, I realized I didn't like it. Like, I found it was too thick. It made it thicker. So I ripped it out, and I ended up doing a slip stitch heel with the 2 different colors. And I think it turned out pretty neat. I was actually really happy with the look, with the overall look. So once I had finished the heel, then it was time to start picking up stitches for the front of the foot and to do the gusset. And honestly, I had a lot of trouble because I followed his instructions on size for the leg. He suggested that you measure your foot across, like just around your foot, to get what size to make. And I did that, and when I finished this part, I couldn't get it over my instep. So I had to rip out and redo it, like redo the leg and add more stitches. I made it so it was actually between 2 sizes. Because normally when I do stitches or do socks, I end up with a 64 stitch count. So I figured that what I would need to do is come up with that in order to make it fit. And they're tight. There's negative ease for sure trying to get these over my feet, but they do fit, and they fit quite nicely. So I'm happy with it in the end. But I didn't follow, oh, there goes my captain's clock. If you are a regular listener, you know that I tend to have clocks going off during my episode. I have a lot of clocks. So anyhow, instead of following his pattern for the top half of the foot, the gusset, and that, I decided to just kind of improvise and do my own vanilla sock thing. And then I added this stripe of the 2 different colors that goes all the way around the sock and then turns and comes back and ends in the toe. So that was kind of my own little design. So these were definitely Stephen West inspired, but ultimately ended up becoming my own design, which I'm pretty happy with. Actually, I have to say I'm quite happy with. The main color was a Rose Hill yarn that I got when I was at the Vibrations Festival in Victoria, not this past summer, but the summer before. It came in a Blooming Fade kit, it was called, that had, I believe it was 5 different skeins of 20 grams each. And so I felt like I was playing a bit of yarn chicken by the time that I got to the toe of the second sock. I was really hoping I was going to have enough left to finish, and I did. By, I think I had something like 3 grams left, or 2.5 grams of left of yarn. So it was a very close call, but it was a successful game of yarn chicken, which is always nice. So yeah, these are finished object number 1. Finished object number 2 is another pair of socks, and these ones I made from the yarn that I got when I was in Newfoundland back in June. I was up in Grousmoor National Park and stopped at my favorite yarn store in Newfoundland. It's called Molly Maid, and it's in Woody Point, which is just this lovely, lovely little town right at the in Bon Bay area of Newfoundland. And yeah, it was an Atlantic. Ever have those days where you just can't talk. It was a wool dyer from Atlantic Canada who had done this, and I will put the name of it down below because it's not coming to me immediately, but it should be like right there on your screen if you want to look. I did the heel, toes, and cuffs. I actually used 3 different colors. It's kind of, I guess, yeah, you can see that it's actually 3 different colors that I used from a advent kit that I got last year called the Color Wheel, and it only had 10 grams of each color, and I wasn't sure if I would have enough, like what I would have enough to do, so I decided to do just the 3 different colors, and they're close enough that when they're on your feet you don't really notice, unless you really don't notice unless you hold them up together, and then you can tell that they're different. But just standard vanilla socks, my normal sock pattern that I do for every sock, where I knit from cuff down, 64 stitches on 2.25 millimeter needles. I do 20 rounds for the cuff and 50 rounds for the leg. I do a slip stitch heel, and I always alternate my slip stitches so that it makes for a nice tight weave. Instead of, I know some people, a lot of designs I see, they do the slip stitch on the same stitch each time around, so you get like that line down the middle. And I think it makes it stronger if you alternate them. So something to think about, something to try if you're looking to experiment with your socks. And then, yeah, I think I did like 65 rounds on the foot before I started adding the color in, and I added in a stripe before I switched to the toe color. And yeah, that's just a pair of vanilla socks. So that's finished item number 2. Unfortunately, that's the only finished items that I have this time around. You'd think that after being off for a couple of months, I would have a lot more, but most of my problem has lied in my choice of sweater knitting, which I will get to right now. Let me get it. So I decided to knit this sweater called the Helga. I had seen it before and I thought it was like gorgeous. It's an all over cable knit. As you can see, it's got like these little flower patterns that run down on both sides. And and just a crossing over diamond cable stitch in the middle and moss stitch on the side. I had the yarn already. It was it's called Lucky Tweed. I had got it from frogging the Felix cardigan that I made a couple of years ago that I just wasn't wearing. And I did my gauge swatch. I did everything right, but I decided that I was going to knit it in the round instead of knitting it in pieces, which was probably my first mistake. You know, rule number 1, just follow the pattern. They're written the way they are, usually for a pretty good reason, but no, I decided that I wanted to try and knit it in the round. And so I did. As you can see, it's a bottom-up construction, and I have finished the back panel. And this is actually the 3rd time that I have finished the back panel, because the first time I did it, I completely read it wrong. My cables were not right and it just looked terrible and I ended up frogging it. The second time I knit it, I don't know what I was thinking, but instead of, it says something like take off, I don't know, I think it was like 7 stitches on the next 2 rounds. So they mean, you know, because if the pattern's written to be knit flat, they mean take off 7 stitches going that way and then 7 stitches going that way. But because I was knitting in the round, I took off 7 stitches for each side going around once and 7 stitches going around twice, which then meant that I had taken off 14 stitches on each side, and it came right into here. It cut off that much. And I knit the entire back panel before I realized what my mistake was. And I held it up and I was like, wait a minute, how is this gonna fit? Like, I was sure that I had gauge swatched and it, you know, it should stretch out to like, anyway. The light bulb went on in the head. I realized what I had done wrong. And so yeah, I frogged it out again. And this time I have the back panel finished and right. I am now working on the front panel, and it's, I have about another 2 or 3 inches to go before I start cutting in for the shoulders. And then I am going to find myself kind of stumped. And honestly, if anybody can make any suggestions, I would really, really appreciate it, because I am not sure how to do the sleeves once I do this. I've left the 14 and not 28 stitches for the armhole. I've left them on placeholders just in case there's a way for me to pick them up and knit round, like, you know how when you just do a normal raglan or any kind of sweater, usually, you know, you cut off for the sleeves and then you just pick up and you knit in the round. And I'm not sure that with the shape of this that I will be able to do that, but it's something that I'm hoping that I can try to do, because I would really like it if I could just knit from the top down, and then I would know how long to make the sleeves so that I got them the right length. You know, then I can just keep trying it on. I'm not sure that I want to try knitting the sleeves flat and sewing them in the way that they suggest. So it's, yeah, this whole sweater has just been like a huge experiment, and so much time. You forget how much work goes into an all over cable sweater until you do. And I think it's probably been about 10 years since the last time I did a full size all over cable sweater. And I remember when I finished that one thinking, ooh, it'll be a while before I do one of these again. And I kind of forgot that until I got into this one. And it, you know, it is pretty, and I think I'm gonna love it when it's done. I hope I'm gonna love it when it's done. Let's just put it that way, okay? I am going to love it when it's done. Yes, I am. So that is what has been taking me so long, and that is why I have not done a recording in months, because this has just been sucking up all my time. So that is work in progress number 1. So work in progress number 2 is probably not even worth showing you, because this is what I've got. I decided that I was finally going to cast on my dream knit, which is the Ophelia sweater. I have been wanting to knit this one forever, and I have been looking and looking and looking, trying to find the right yarn. And I finally found what I think is going to be right. I got this cashmere merino silk that is just absolutely gorgeous for the main color. Is it a DK weight or a sport weight now? I don't even remember. It's a sport weight. And then I also got this, oh my gosh, this is a Malabrigo. It's been so long since I cast it on. I cast this on back in August, thinking that I would do it first. But I had the needles that I was using for my Helga. I had already started the Helga. I'd started with the ribbing and I'd got that far. And so I had to finish the ribbing on the Helga before I started onto this. And I just sort of made myself go, no, you're just gonna finish one sweater at a time and get it done. But oh, this is so soft and I just want to work on it. And I'm at the point where I just want to put this thing away and not even look at it again. But I've always been sort of a monogamous knitter when it comes to sweaters. And so I will just power through and stick with it. And I will get to my Ophelia. I have to at least get to the point where I have the sleeves started on this, because once the sleeves are on this, it's just moss stitch all the way to get the sleeves finished. So I can do that, and it shouldn't take me too long once I can get the body finished. So hopefully my goal at this point is to have this finished by the end of October, because I certainly don't want to carry it through into November, and I want my Ophelia well underway by then. So yeah, you can see I've got it. Yeah, I've got little stitch markers all the way through of where I'm going to be dividing for sleeves. And yeah, the Ophelia it calls for a provisional cast on. That's why I've got the two different colors in here, because that's my provisional cast on. So yeah, hopefully I will be able to show that to you next time, because it's such a beautiful pattern. I'll put a picture of it up here so you can see what it looks like. It's been on my radar for far too long, and I just can't wait to get into it. I just gotta barrel through the Helga first. So I have one more work in progress it's just a long-standing whip that's going to take forever to do, but I have been showing it in the last few episodes since I started it. It's a DK jelly roll blanket that I'm working on. But I'm doing it with sock yarn held double instead of with a DK yarn. So it is, yeah, I've got 2 strips finished. I think I was right here on the second strip last time I showed it. So I finished the second strip, and I've got the third strip underway, and yeah, it's getting there. It's going to be a slow, long project. I'm hoping to have it for camping next summer is my goal. I want to use it in my little bowler when I go camping. So yeah, that's about it for this episode. Oh, I have one other whip on the go. Let me grab it. Okay, so my final whip is another pair of socks. These ones are Christmas socks. I have to say I am kind of disappointed with the yarn. I don't know if you can see how badly the green bled into it. I haven't washed them or done anything with it. This is just how it's come out of the ball. It's almost like a gray, the white. The green has just made such a mess of it. So anyhow, I will put the name of the sock brand right down below here, because I don't have the label in front of me to remember. But yeah, just a huge disappointment. I finished the first sock, and I am through the heel and toe, or through the heel and heading towards the toe on the second sock. And I'm really hoping to have these finished soon, because they're not my favorite pair of socks I've made, that's for sure. I was going to try and line the colors up so that they matched, but I decided, nope, I want them to not match. I think they'd look better, because I don't like it when you try and match them up and then you're off by a little bit and then they're just not quite right. I'd rather have them completely different. So that's, so that is work in progress number 1, 2, 3, 4, I guess. So that's it for knitting. I have no spinning really at all to talk about. I haven't done much spinning at all this summer. I'm still working on the same skein that I was working on last time, I think. It's been, I just had such a busy time. I did an indigo dye workshop, and I did an eco dyeing workshop where we dyed silk scarves. And I went back to Newfoundland again for a second trip, back for the Writers' Festival in the middle of August, and went camping a couple of times, and over to the island. And it's just, yeah, it was a busy, busy summer. And now that fall's here, I'm, ready to settle back in and get my needles going and finish that frickin' Helga. I did say frickin', I know it sounded like I didn't, but yeah, I want to get the Helga done. You understand, I hope. All right, that's it for knitting. For those of you who want to stick around and talk reading, please do so. And for those who don't, I hope to catch you next time. All right, into reading. Okay, well, books. Let's talk books. I have been just churning through books at a horrific rate, I'm afraid, since the last time that I recorded. If I keep looking down, it's because I've got my iPad open so that I can remember them all, because there's been a lot. I think I left off the last time I recorded, I believe, was the beginning of July. So since then, I've read 2 books by Christine Higdon, both of which I highly, highly, highly recommend. If you've never heard of her before, you need to check her out. She's just phenomenal. She wrote one called The Very Marrow of Our Bones, it's a story of a mother who walks out on a family of 5 and the fallout that happens because of it. It's just so brilliantly written. Honestly, I love Christine Higdon's style. In both of her books, the other one's called Gin, Turpentine, Pennyroyal Rue, which is both books are have a dog that is a narrator of part of the story, and you gotta love that. I don't know if you like dogs, it's just they're so rich and so richly layered, and her prose is beautiful, and her storylines carry on at a pace that is quick moving enough that it keeps you intrigued the whole way through, but yet with enough literary prose in it that it makes it beautiful to read at the same time. So those both books, just highly recommend. I read the book Yellowface by R.F. Kuang, which I didn't really enjoy all that much. I liked the start of the book because it, as a writer myself who is just in the process of having my first novel published, I liked the way that she talks about the publishing industry, and in an honest way that most people don't. Normally when you watch a movie or, hear about some fictitious person, signing a contract for their book, and then the book's out in 2 months later, sort of thing. It's, it's just not the way it happens in the industry, and just the amount of social media and stuff involved in trying to promote a book. I really enjoyed it from that aspect of it, but I found, it wasn't what I had hoped it was going to be. So that one I don't really recommend. I read Little Bee by Chris Cleave, and that was, oh my gosh, that's the story of this couple who are on holidays in Nigeria, and they happen to walk upon a scene of these 2 young girls who are being chased down because they had witnessed the burning of their town by these people who want it for the oil industry. Anyway, it's the story of both the couple and the girl who survives that, and the way that they intertwine. And it's a really, really good look at immigration in the UK. I highly recommend that one if you want a good read. I already mentioned A Grandmother Begins the Story, and I'm going to mention it again because I think it's my favorite book I have read in years. It is so beautifully written. It's a family saga sort of thing of, I think there's 4 different generations that it goes through, or 5 generations maybe. I can't remember now, but each person's story comes out in their own voice. There's buffalo, or the bison are in there, and you get the bison story told from the bison. At one point, even a car is even the narrator at one point, and these 2 dogs are narrating as well, and it just keeps it. Oh, it's just a beautiful adventure. I honestly, it's about trying to find being a person of First Nation descent and trying to find your way in the world now that everything's so different from what it was for the ancestors. So it's absolutely amazing. The author's name is Michelle Porter, and if you have a chance to check it out, it's just wonderful. Susie Taylor's book, Even Weirder Than Before. I had read her book of short stories called Vigil Stories, which I think I talked about in my last episode, and if I didn't, that one is incredible too. But Even Weirder Than Before, I absolutely loved it. It's a coming of age story. It was like taking a ride back through my teens, and just the pacing again was just absolutely brilliant. That just kept you moving, and absolutely loved it. I read Shashi Bhat's The Most Precious Substance on Earth, which I mean, that book starts off with this young girl who is, corresponding with a pedophile on social media, and at the same time, she has a crush on her English teacher, and it ends up going pretty bad, and then the book, it was almost like so many different stories that she was trying to cram into one book. I think she could have written 3 different books, because there's like her childhood, and then with this going on, and then sort of the college years with other stuff going on, and then her adulthood. And I had expected them to relate back more to the beginning than it did. I don't know, it just wasn't, it didn't do it for me. Maybe it will for you, but not me. The next one I read was, I ended up on the Giller long list, which I'm pretty excited about, by an author from right here where I live, Corinna Chong, and it was called Badland, and I absolutely loved this. If you're a fan of Donna Tartt at all, if you enjoyed like The Goldfinch or her Donna Tartt, my favorite of her books was The Little Friend. Anyhow, Corinne's writing is a lot like Donna Tartt's in the way that her characters all have this kind of dark underside to them, and I love it. It's just so artfully done, the way she handles it. Oh, there goes can tell I've been talking a while, because there goes the clock again. But definitely worth picking up. Badland by Corinna Chong. The next one I read was The Leap Year Gene by Shelley Wood, who is another local author here in Kelowna. And that is, I think I barreled through the first 200 pages of that one in less than 2 days. I was averaging 100 pages a day because I couldn't put it down. The beginning of it is just so, you're worried what's going to happen to this little girl who for some reason her genetics are messed up and she's only aging 1 year for every 4. So, you know, you know, by the time that she's 16, she's only 4 years old physically. So you know, and it was back during the time when all of the stuff was going on in Germany, where, you know, wipe out the bad genes, and you know, the family has to just keep moving as, you know, people become suspicious as to why this little girl Kit is not growing up. So yeah, I really enjoyed, especially the beginning of that one. It was good. I know Shelley personally, so I don't think I can do an unbiased account on it, but definitely there's a reason why it's on the Globe and Mail's top selling list and worth checking out. I reread Kazoo Ishiguro's Never Let Me Go, because we were talking about it and I could not remember how it ended. It was bothering me. So it's an old book. It's been around a long time, so I'm not going to spend too much time going over it, but I gave it a 4 out of 5 when I reread it. Anyhow, I did Jane Urquhart's In Winter I Get Up at Night, which is, if you're a Jane Urquhart fan, you're going to love it. If you're not a Jane Urquhart fan, you might find it slow moving, but you know, it tells the story of a girl growing up where she gets caught in a hurricane and ends up in a body cast in a hospital away from her family. And so the story goes back and forth from her being a child in the hospital to being an adult, and just some of the weird things that her parents were into, which may involve wearing white cloaks and cone hats. So yeah, it was quite a story and well worth reading, and I can understand why it's on the Giller long list. Another absolute favorite one that I could not put down was American Dirt by Jeanine Cummins, which really opened my eyes as to the whole immigration system down in the US and why migrants from Mexico and Central America are trying to get into the US. It's this absolutely just incredibly gripping story of this woman who her entire family gets shot dead within the first few pages, except for her and her young son, who had gone in to use the bathroom, and how they are trying to escape because of the cartel are trying to wipe out her entire family. And just the process of what she goes through to try and get out of Acapulco, and riding trains, you know, riding the top of freight trains, and just, oh my gosh, it is just, I couldn't put it down. I burned through that book in, I think, 3 days, which it was just, it was impossible to put it down. Life stopped, absolutely stopped, because I just wanted to know that you know, that they were going to be okay. Totally gripping book. Definitely recommend it. The last two were The Sleeping Car Porter by Suzette Mayr, which was just a fabulous book. I loved it. It was about this guy back in, oh my gosh, I think it was the 1920s, where he worked on a train as the porter in the sleeping car and he gets stuck on this transcontinental trip going from Montreal to Vancouver, and just the passengers and the people, the way he portrays them all, it's absolutely brilliant. A wonderful character sketch. You know, just this little girl that's like clinging to his leg, and he's, you know, he's walking along trying to trying to serve people, and he's got this child that just won't let go of him, and just little details like that. It was priceless. It was, you know, I can understand why it was a former Giller lister. And the last one on my list that I just finished was Moon of the Crusted Snow by Wabgeshig Rice. I made the mistake of, well, not the mistake, but I read the sequel to this book already. I think I talked about it a few months ago, called what was that one called? I'll put it down here. my old fallback. I'll put it down there. But yeah, it was Moon of the Crusted Snow was, you know, how the story starts, and it's you know, all of a sudden power is cut and the world goes into turmoil, and it's how this First Nation reserve survives. And it's just brilliantly written. And there again, the tension in it was just like so thick you couldn't see through it. I literally read that one in 2.5 days. It was just, could not put it down. So yeah, there you have it. That's my reading wrap up for this month. There's a lot of books. Anyhow, I've got a bunch on my to-read list. I'm in the middle of another Giller nominated one. I'm trying to read my way through the entire Giller long list. I like to do that. Just there's a reason they're on that list, and they're usually pretty good books. So anyhow, that's it. I will sign off for now. I will try to get back to you again the end of October or beginning of November. Hopefully with a finished Helga sweater and my Ophelia well on the way, and my Christmas socks done and forgotten about. And yeah, that's it for now. I wish you happy crafting, happy knitting.